everyone. Welcome to WWF Pavilion. Well, in my culture, basically, whenever we are starting something great, if it goes rain, that means it's a good luck. So, with that on note, so first of all, let me welcome everybody to our WWF Pavilion on the side event that we are organizing jointly with IFRC on roadmap for escalating nature-based solution at scale to address climate and disaster risks, and some of the lesson learned and the way forward. And I would like to welcome all of you who are present physically over here, and also those individuals who are joining us online through our YouTube channel. Welcome once again. So before we start, I would really like to show a video that we had produced in terms of the partnership that we are doing in the Asia Pacific region. So please tune on.
Across Asia Pacific, our communities are on the front lines of climate change impacts and disasters.
Nói chung về gần chục năm về đây thì nói chung cuộc sống người dân đây thì cũng gặp nhiều cái khó khăn vì do nó biến đổi khí hậu ấy. Nước triều cường thì nó dâng cao là có những thời điểm nó ngập hết, người dân hay gặp những cái trở ngại.
Our region is home to 6 of the 10 most climate vulnerable countries.
यहाँ पे तकरीबन 64 जो घर थे वो मुकम्मल तौर पे डैमेज हो गए, ख़त्म हो गए, सफ़ेद हस्ती से मिट चुके हैं और सिंगुड़े के करीब जो हैं वो पार्शली डैमेज है.
There's a lot of quick changes in the climate. It's very hot. It's also affecting our crops. It's really affecting, the way we survive in our communities.
Without urgent action, more extreme weather and disasters could displace 1.2 billion people by 2050. But people like Tron, Talim, and Wate are not helpless in the face of climate hazards. Together, we can adapt to a warming world and strengthen local resilience. Frontline communities can protect what matters most by working with nature. And each other. In order to build climate-resilient communities across Asia-Pacific, WWF, together with partners like the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, is working hand-in-hand with our local communities to move from response to resilience. By embedding nature into disaster management, we are strengthening the climate and disaster resilience of our communities, boosting food and water security, as well as supporting biodiversity and ecosystem services that support our health and sustainable livelihoods. By putting nature at the heart of resilience, we are not just helping our communities withstand climate and disaster risks. We are ensuring that we thrive. Community-led disaster risk reduction plans combined with the power of early warning systems, enable people to prepare for and protect themselves against increasing climate threats. Through nature-based solutions, we embrace the power of our resiliency, the power of our humanity, the power of our heritage, and the power of our ingenuity, not only across our Asia-Pacific region, but in all corners of our planet. Tron, Talim, and Wate, and billions more are bound by the same fight, the same hope. Our future hinges on what we do now. If not now, then when? And if not together, how? The path forward is ours to shape. Let's build a future worthy of us all.
Thank you all. I hope this video will really inspire you, the power of nature and the power of partnership. So on that note, and now we will go on a panel discussion. So I would really like to welcome my panelists in the floor, so in the dais. So Yale. So the panelists will be seated based on where the photos are. Great. Thank you all, and thank you so much for all the time, my dear panelists. So let me introduce my panel for our event today. So in my left is Yale De Jong, if I hope I pronounced the name correct. He is the Executive Director of WWF Netherlands. And before joining the WWF, Yale was the Director of IBN, Nature Education and NGO that aims to connect people and the biodiversity within the Netherlands. And he is a very active advocate on the nature and the conservation work and has a decade of experience. So welcome, Yale. Now, similarly, I would really like to turn over to Nini, with whom I have known for quite some time. So Nini is our Global Climate Change Lead for the IFRC Secretary based in Geneva. And she works on the scaling of the IFRC network strategy and programmatic approach on climate change in all 191 national society across the globe. And she has more than 20 years of experience working on this space. Welcome, Nini. Moving on, I would like to introduce Daudi Sumba. Daudi Sumba is Chief Conservation Officer for WWF International and based in Gland, Geneva, Gland, Switzerland, sorry. He is really passionate African conservation and development leader with over 30 years of experience. That's a huge experience so far. And out of those 30 years, he has more than 15 years of, let's say, leadership and management role. So welcome, Daudi, for the event. And last but not least, I would really like to introduce Nadia Ortega from IFRC Americas, and she is the Climate Resilience and Environmental Coordinator for IFRC America region. She coordinates the work and support the Red Cross office in the regions, and she brings more than 10 years of experience in the humanitarian work. And she had also worked previously in WFO and OCHA. So welcome, Nadia, as well. So thank you all for your time, my dear panelists. Now moving on, let me ask a question to Yale, coming from a national WWF national office. From a national country perspective, how do you see the partnership? How do you see this IFRC and WWF partnership, and the importance of this partnership from a national country perspective? And can you explain in terms of how you are working with Red Cross Netherlands back at home?
Yes, thank you very much, Sandeep. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Probably the latest session of the day, the last session of the day. And fantastic to be here with the IFRC colleagues. Yes, of course, we all know that we are at a time where climate change and biodiversity loss are very much intertwined. And we have seen extreme weather events increasing a lot, 40% in the last 20 years. And if we look at the World Economic Forum, they make this risk matrix. The number one risk they see for the next 10 years are extreme weather events. If we look at what we have to do in terms of nature conservation and climate mitigation, then preparing ourselves for these extreme weather events is crucial. As a nature organization, we also think that we can never save nature with philanthropic money. So what we want to do, also from the Dutch office, is mobilize money for nature that was never meant for nature. Yeah? And there are enormous budgets for infrastructure. Security is a key driver for governments. And if we are able to develop natural solutions for security, then not only we secure people's lives, but we also work for biodiversity, creating maybe a bioeconomy, working on tourism. But if we build mangroves, we give fishers a place to hide their boats in terms of strong storms. We build biodiversity, so the fish will remain there. And we use traditions that people have developed in thousands and hundreds of years. So we believe that working with IFRC, the International Red Cross, and Red Crescent, we can make a golden combination, bringing together two of the world's strongest brands on one of the world's most pressing issues, namely protecting ourselves from extreme weather events. And also together with the International Red Cross, we discovered that every euro invested in natural-based solutions for protection of people saves 16 euros in crisis management. And that is why in the Netherlands, the Dutch Red Cross and the Dutch WWF, we found each other, not only on a business case, but also in friendship, because that is how these things work. And what we find is that when we visit our donors together, they love to see these two powerful brands working for one objective. And they love to support us on not only a project level, but at a much bigger landscape level, making finance plans for resilience. And yeah, I like to talk a bit more about that, but I don't want to eat up all the time, so I'll leave it at this for now.
Yeah, thank you, Eli. I think that's really key, and I really like in terms of you say that WWF and Red Cross going and talking to the partner, they love the brand. I think that's really cool. I think that's the power that we believe that this both network brings in this partnership and the nature, and we working together for the nature-based solution. So thank you for that. Nini, can I turn to you now? So I know that you and I, we had worked on this partnership from very beginning, initially from year 2020, and you are very much instrumental in terms of shaping the partnership goal and the vision. So for the first phase, and currently we are in the, I would say, the 4th year of the phase 1. So I just want to get in terms of your perspective, why this partnership is really important for the IFRC perspective, and can you highlight some of the success that we had achieved so far?
Thanks so much, Sandeep, and it's a real pleasure to be here and be reflecting on this and have a space to think about where have we come in the last kind of 4 years of a global partnership. And there's kind of 3 broad areas where I wanted to think about it a bit, and something's actually building on what you just said, Jelle. So I think it is a merging of worlds. And that, to me, is very much a process. So we are talking about WWF as an organization based on protecting nature, the intrinsic value of nature, and an organization that is about protecting people, immediate, urgent, life-saving needs. And I think while we can have a joint vision of protecting people by protecting nature, it's not an immediate thing that you bring together these kind of ways of working. And there's a few reasons how we do differently in the environment sector and the humanitarian sector. And I do think we are talking to date still of two different sectors. One is the time element. So maybe for those of I see some of my humanitarian colleagues in the room, just the time it takes for a tree to grow is different than the time we have to evacuate someone out of Hurricane Melissa taking place in Jamaica. It's just a different timeline, so it's a different way of working in that regard. There's also a scale element where we are very much a community-based network. Understandably, for WWF, we're talking about ecosystems, landscapes. These are much larger scale. How we work is different, so we as humanitarians need to understand how do you restore an ecosystem? How can a mangrove become protective of a coastal community, for example? Well, on the other hand, what we're bringing, and I think that video showed it quite nicely, what is the relevance of having early warning systems or alerts that can take people out of harm's way? How does prepositioning of stock work? Are we harming nature while we're making sure that people can get out of harm's way or providing shelter for them, etc.? And this means that we need different kinds of skills and knowledge that we're combining together effectively. And also who we work is different. So in the WWF world, we're looking at environment ministries, natural resource management practices. We're looking at civil society organizations working on conservation, for example. while for the IFRC network, it's about disaster management authorities, health authorities, disaster management groups at community level, or health NGOs as an example. And I think this merging of worlds has been a process, and I think that's been a big learning for us both, and I think it's extremely enriching when you find a new world and you're able to kind of dive into that. And I think that's really brought us to where we are today, has been defining what is our unique selling point. So why okay, our brands are great, so that's good for business because that looks nice, that there's the panda and there's the little red hat and the Red Cross and everyone knows them and they're together and it's all nice and cute. But what does that mean? Why us? What does that actually mean in practice? And I do think it's exactly, and Jelle, you touched on that the solutions need to be joint. So we cannot see people being removed out of harm's way away from protecting nature. The policies need to be aligned. We need to be able to protect both the natural resources people depend upon as well as the people themselves. We need to bring more dialogue to disaster management and environmental authorities, bring our knowledge together and break silos. And that's then where we need to move to action. And again, you touched on that, Jelle. And I think that's where it took us 4 years to get to this merging of worlds, to really understand each other, to see how we do it and move towards action. And now we're hitting the doing it. And this video is actually proof of that first large-scale funding. When we started talking about this 4 years ago, we've now got funding for 10 million from the UAE aid, which is initially for these 4 countries in Asia-Pacific that we saw, Fiji, Philippines, Indonesia, and Solomon Islands, but we see this as a broader initiative going forward. We also have an ongoing project on the People's Postcode Lottery, which interestingly, there's a similarity between us. We have these national offices, so Netherlands Red Cross with WWF Netherlands, with the UK, with Sweden, implementing projects in Kenya, Philippines, and other places. And I feel that now that we're identifying what we want to do, where we want to do it, this building trust element is really important. As you were saying, friendships do actually matter. So Sandeep, you did mention we've known each other for a while. I think it's coming close to 20 years. But that global friendship needs to become a national friendship and a community friendship. And Nadia's going to talk about that more, because that's not something that happens overnight. Just if we get along, or we get along in the Netherlands, do we get along in Fiji? And do we get along in the outer islands of Fiji where we're actually implementing this? That trust needs to be built. And it's such an exciting time now that we have this initial funding. We have collaboration like with the Netherlands where we can tap into alternative innovative sources of finance. And that, I think, is the real beginning of where we're going to the second phase. And I believe Daudi will be reflecting on that in a little bit. So I'll kind of stop there and be the backward-looking person and leave that to the colleagues on my left. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Nini. I think you really highlight, you hit the nail in the foray in terms of breaking these silos and how we, as a two really a big partner, can really make those changes, and also the conservation work with complementary with the DRR work. But I didn't, so thank you so much for that. Now let me turn to Daudi, our Chief Conservation Officer. From a WWF point of view, we are a conservation organization, but from a conservation organization, why you see and what is the importance that the IFRC bring to us in our conservation work? And also, can you also unpack what is the partnership, the phase 2 the plan of our partnership? Because in today's event, we are really trying to launch our phase 2 of our global partnership. So can you also unpack some of those key elements on what we had agreed on the phase 2 of our global partnerships?
Okay, thank you very much, Sandeep, and thanks for having us here. Jelle has already explained some of the rationale as to why we came together with IFRC to bring together complementary skills to address some of the challenges that we face, especially with climate change and biodiversity loss. WWF operates in a space where the nexus between biodiversity loss and climate change is very pronounced. And our expertise basically is in the nature side of things. You know, we are a nature organization. We focus on nature, but we are beginning to see climate change bringing far-reaching impacts on communities that flow into disaster risk reduction. And we think that climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction are very intertwined, cannot be easily separated. And we believe that a partnership between ourselves and IFRC helps very much, not just nature conservation, but climate change adaptation, because it's very difficult to separate those two important things. And so we've been working together with IFRC since 2021, when we signed an MOU to bring these two ideas together, climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction, as a way of addressing the impacts that we see out of climate change. And so we've, like Nini has explained, we've had some on-ground work already going on. And based on the success of that work, we are now going to be moving into the phase 2 of our partnership. And when we were working together in phase 1, we did author a report that showed that nature has the potential to reduce the intensity of climate change and weather-related hazards by about 26%, which could save developing countries at least $104 billion up to 393, about $400 billion by 2050. So nature really is immense as a solution for disasters and losses that people would experience as a result of climate change. But moving ahead with this new partnership, basically our vision as a partnership is that the people and ecosystems will have built greater resilience to climate change impacts and disaster risks by working with nature. So that's sort of the vision we have, to bring these two together. People will have greater resilience as we bring our expertise from nature conservation. IFRC brings the expertise from disaster risk management, to help us move people forward. And to realize this vision, we have about 5 major areas or goals that we will jointly focus on. The first is we will enhance the climate and disaster resilience of at least 20 million people in diverse ecosystems. So we've already cut it out for ourselves. I know that the humanitarian people like to focus on numbers of people that they rescue or they help. And so we will be looking at 20 million at least. So we could do 40, 50, depending on how best we schedule ourselves. But we will do at least 20 million people to enhance their climate and disaster resilience in diverse ecosystems. The second one is a monetary goal. To do this, we need resources. Yele has already spoken about some of the resources that we need to look at, non-traditional sources of finance, not just philanthropy as it were. So we have a joint resource mobilization goal, and we hope to mobilize at least $250 million over the course of the partnership to do this work. We think that's sufficiently ambitious for now, for 20 million people, but who knows, as we experience this and develop a track record, we might readjust upwards our ambition for resources. The third one is actually implementation of high integrity nature-based solutions at scale in at least 25 countries. So 20 million people at a cost of $250 million in 25 countries. So you can see how we would like to cover the scale across the areas that we'll be working. And then fourthly, that we will align climate change adaptation and disaster risk management, including through nature-based solutions and better integrated into policy instruments. There are diverse policy instruments that we think that if we are able to align, we will have better results as we implement going forward. And we're thinking here of NDCs, national adaptation plans. We are thinking of NBSAPs. The people who come from our end of the pond know NBSAPs are a big instrument for us. We're thinking of the Sendai framework on disaster reduction. with all its indicators. I remember that, yeah. and all this we will do in the 25 countries, because this is really the policy framework that should allow us to operate and to go at scale in the countries where we have chosen to work. Then, of course, the fifth one will look at capacity building for WWF and IFRC national society, because we need capacity for us to be able to implement this at the scale that is required. So that's what this partnership will be about, and that's what we are aiming for in the next 4-5 years. If you have more ambitious plans than this, come and see us.
Thank you so much, Audi. Yeah. Thank you so much, Audi. I think that's really great, and also quite crystal clear in terms of what the partnership second phase vision really delivers or aim to delivers to. I think that's really good, and you also really touch about the power of nature, but that the 26% impact intensity reduction is quite huge if you talk in terms of numbers, and the saving of the monetary value. I think that's really great. So thank you so much for your intervention, Davi, and also the challenges that you pose to the audience. So now let me turn to Nadia. So Nadia, you are mostly focusing in the American regions, and we were talking before that there is some partnership coming up in the region as well, so which is really great. But from the regional perspective, as what just now the Daudi has outlined, the phase 2 of kind of partnership. So can you highlight us how you can make this happen from the America regions, and what is needed to strengthen more collaboration in your particular regions at the country level or at the local level between both WWF National Office and the IFRS Red Cross National Society?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to be here with you. I think, is it okay?
Keep it close.
Sorry.
Sorry, close, yeah.
Yes, so for us, it's actually very good that to take this partnership, the scale up of this partnership in the Americas, when there has been so much experience and maturity already developed for Asia Pacific and Africa. I think it's important that we not only align at global level, we align our brand. It goes beyond, now to put a little panda with a little red vest. Now it goes into maybe operationalizing in a different way. And that means obviously trying to understand one another better. And in our case, it's also about nationalizing or operationalizing that at local level. You have to understand that the Secretariat of the IFRC represents 191 national societies. That means 191 countries around the world with their specific context, their specific ambitions, their specific plans. So one of our aims is actually to contextualize that also through these partnerships. I think this is a moment now where we're looking into a locally led adaptation as well for partnerships, because we all understand that we each have our mandate, that we each have a role to play in order to strengthen the approaches that we have. But for that, we also need to operationalize that at local level and make these partnerships understandable for those who are implementing them on the ground. So I think it's very important we have now understood that no organization has the entire package of answers. Some of these processes actually require engagement at different levels, at global, regional, and local, to be able to manage change. And sometimes they go even across boundaries. They go beyond a specific geographical area. They go ecosystem level. And so organizations like ours that have the power to address the problems at different levels are keys to be able to provide or push for that change to happen and to bring the solutions our ecosystems, but also all communities will require.
Yeah, thank you, Nadia. I think you touched a very critical element that's also core to WWF is the locally led approach, right? Because that's also one of the key principles for WWF. We really want to make our conservation effort locally led, and it's locally driven, and also bringing the global partnership to local level is that's the really key. That we are trying our best in all geography, and definitely it's really good that. And we also really want to do that in the Americas region, and that's really good. Thank you for your intervention. Now let me let me go to the floor. If there is any questions or any kind of experience that any of the colleagues want to share, please raise your hand, or any question that you want to pose to the panelists. Anybody? Okay. Yeah. Mary, can you introduce yourself and ask the question? Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I'm Mary from WWF Canada. You are talking about a really interesting collaborative and complementary partnership. One thing that I haven't heard yet is a specific example that kind of breaks down who does what. You know, like let's think about, you know, there's a disaster. We're talking about building resilience prior or after an event, or could somebody maybe share a specific example where you did complementary activities towards an outcome?
Nini.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. Maybe from, again, I'm not the expert on it, but the Peace Pools postcode lottery, which is an ongoing project we have with the British Red Cross and WWF UK in Kenya. And so they're working in Lamu in a coastal area, and they're looking at the coastal resources. So WWF would bring an understanding of, you know, how are the mangroves health in that area, how are the fish stock working, you know, what's the ecosystem health in that area. The Red Cross is more bringing into how they've worked on resilience building, so we don't only work in disasters, and I think the partnership begins really more in that risk reduction part. So how do they work with communities in protecting them from next coastal flooding? So whether that is through coastal protection or evacuation routes, or having information on when next storm surges are coming, or identifying how they diversify their livelihoods. So we do those types of activities as well. And so then it's looking at both the assessment tools as the type of actions we're doing, how can we bring those more together in practice and implement it on the ground. And then when we're starting in one area, the idea is to then broaden it to a broader coastal belt and to more communities. I'm broadly simplifying this, but just to give a bit of a feel of what does it look like and who's bringing what to the table, basically.
Yeah, Nadia wants to add something.
Just to complement a bit on what already my colleague has commented, operationally it can look at supporting disaster risk management activities to the offer that you already have at community level, but it can also be at national and regional level a different way of interacting. And an example is we're currently launching the Alliance for the Amazon. So we, as the IFRC, as the national societies, we wanted to engage in this specifically because we saw a lot of problems related to disaster risk reduction in the Amazon. We saw a lot of health issues. We saw a lot of need for psychosocial support after wildfires, after floods. So it was important for us to address this because we come to these communities with the perspective of saving lives. That's currently the mandate of the IFRC. But if we want to really address the problems that are affecting these communities, we need to consider the environment. But this is not necessarily a given for our volunteers. That's not necessarily a given for those taking the decision on the civil protection area, for example. So having partners like WWF sensitizing not only on the risk related to disaster risk management, but also like supporting and understanding that the ecosystem is crucial for that the resilience to develop in the longer term is key. So for example, we have engaged in the Amazon Alliance with WWF in Colombia, with WWF in Bolivia, to bring that different perspective that us as humanitarians will not have the full picture. So it's key to have this different type of partnerships. Well, you have the humanitarian side, but also you have other considerations that might not be in the table, and that will strengthen the approach we have at community level.
Thanks, Nadia. And maybe just to add one more, you heard from Americas and the Africa, just from the Asia, now I can give example of Nepal, where both WWF Nepal and the IFRC Nepal, they choose one particular, let's say, river basin where they went jointly, did vulnerability assessment in the field, and they are developing a joint work program in terms of these are the criteria that will be, these are the places and these are the activities that will be taken care by IFRC, and these are the activity that is taken by WWF, and is basically based on our existing strengths. So those work are there. Just to very simplify, different country has different approach. But I know in Nepal case, in Malaysia case, they are doing joint programmatic approach. They are identifying the project site, going and design and doing the vulnerability assessment jointly using different tools, and also identifying the activities. What can be done by WWF and what can be done by IFRC. So those labels are also really happening in those countries. So those things are going, I would say. Any other question? Okay, I see Hang Nang your hand.
Thank you. So I'm from WWF Myanmar office. So as a country office, we have been trying to do like copying the similar model and trying to cooperate with IFRC Myanmar office. But we are not officially part of this partnership yet. But what we have been trying actually take us like years already. And it's really, the question really linked to what our colleague have been mentioned, that who do what. For us at the ground level, we do a lot of mangrove restorations, livelihood improvement for the Delta communities, and IFRC and local partners are really strong in disaster risk management. And so when we design the program, when we think the challenge is as who do what, and how do we contribute, like in terms of funding, in terms of technical support. So how is this roadmap really could help like a national level collaboration? And what support that is at the higher level can really guide through like the national level, as Nini mentioned, national level collaboration, community level collaboration. So if this, how can we localize this roadmap? That would be my question. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, thank you for that question. And maybe you can add, but what I would like to highlight is how do we take this to scale? Because mangrove restoration with philanthropic money is very expensive. How are we going to achieve mobilizing at least 250 million euros? You think that 250 million euros is a lot of money? Well, in the Netherlands, if we make a highway, the average cost is 15 million per kilometer. Per kilometer. So this is about almost 20 kilometers of highway in the Netherlands. Yeah. To take this to scale, we have to show on a regional level, together with country offices, to governments, that this is a solution, an infrastructural solution, a people solution that is actually very cheap. We have to zoom out to the landscape level, look at the biggest risks, and then make a plan with some philanthropic money, then mobilize public money, then mobilize maybe money from a multilateral development bank, and then mobilize private money in an integral risk plan, make a finance plan for a longer term, mobilizing, using the philanthropic money that we have to mobilize much, much bigger sums for a landscape restoration and people readiness plan that is owned by governments and supported by financial institutions and companies, because some of these companies, they put a lot of pressure on the landscape and they should be also part of restoring it. So working with country offices on concrete projects is fantastic, as long as they, as far as I'm concerned, are a proof of concept that is a starting point for scaling up.
Thank you. Anybody wants to? Okay.
Yeah,
Saudi.
I know you've asked us specific questions about how country offices can get involved and how they can get this going. I think as part of this program, we would like to develop the necessary body of knowledge that can help you to roll out this sort of partnership in a country office. Because I think that's what your concern is. You know, before we begin to talk about scaling up and adding to regional levels, you are concerned, how do I do it in Maima in a way that is relevant for me and my local IFRC community? And so I think the work that we are doing in this pilot is going to help us to develop that framework for how you integrate the two, how you integrate disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation, and give you practical tools and ways in which you can do that in your country. So that's part of what we are going to do. Then we can begin to get into the discussion of scaling and how we roll out resources the way Yele has described. But I sense that you are asking about where the rubber is hitting the road, and that's what we will try and help you with.
Thank you, Dowdy. Anybody? Okay. No. Okay. Any last question? Okay. 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 Nadia, you want to add?
Yeah, actually,
okay.
just wanted to give a tip to our colleague. I think it's important to understand that sometimes we speak different languages. So I would definitely recommend you that if you want to strengthen your partnership with your local Red Cross in Myanmar, consider first having a first approach and then try to understand where our common grounds are. What's their mandate, what's my mandate, and specifically what's the language that we communicate. For example, mitigation might mean different for you as an environmental organization than for us as a disaster risk management organization. Then the next step will be a bit to understand what type of activities we do, what areas do we cover, where we might be able to work together because we have common streams of funding, and what type of tools we can or methodologies could adapt that could complement one another. We have really interesting methodologies that engage in participatory approaches. These can be useful for you if you want to develop longer term and sustainable solutions in those specific communities. So try to find your common grounds, and then you can definitely use the blueprint of the global MOU, the Global Memorandum of Understanding, and adapt it to your specific context. This is something that, for example, Colombia Red Cross has recently done, using the global MOU and adapting it to the specific need in Colombia. So I think it's definitely something worth trying, but it all starts with a phone call and an approach.
Okay, Nini.
Maybe just to kind of bridge on all the comments, I mean, I agree with everyone, but I think before we get the 20 kilometers of a Dutch highway, I think it's important to kind of start that trust partnership point, which goes exactly to what I think you were saying, Dowdy, that let's start with something. And I do think an initial seed funding is something we found is very beneficial, so that you see this works and this is what we can scale. And I think that was one of our challenges when we started wanting to go too big. I think let's start a little bit, and then quite soon it can grow quite fast once you've kind of done those steps and done concretely what Nadia is describing with a bit of money, get it going, and then going to scale. And then we'll all have a nice Dutch highway, 20K plus.
Yes, thank you, Nini. Yeah, definitely the seed funding really helps a lot, what we have seen. And definitely we will not go, maybe 200 kilometer highway. Okay, well, moving on, maybe I will ask one more round of the question. I really want to get from you guys, especially in terms of what are some of the opportunities and the challenges that you see to make success on the goal, what Dowdy has outlined in this phase 2 on the global partnership from your individual perspective. So what are some of the challenges? What are some of the opportunities that you see? So may I call Dowdy to give your remarks?
No, very quickly. I think the opportunities are there. There's great interest from the WWF network to build this out and to expand the partnership with IFRC. I guess that from where I sit, I also sense there's a lot of interest from them. So the opportunity to partner to grow it, I think is great. Like Yele already talked about, we are two big reputed international organizations with great reach. That's a big opportunity. It's not often that you find two organizations that can complement each other coming to the table to discuss how they can jointly address something in which they bring two different but complementary set of skills to address a common problem. And then, of course, like we've talked here, there's the opportunity to scale up. Once we have the proof of concept and we have, tested it out, we can go landscape, we can go regional, we can go wherever we want. I think challenges, of course, we are two different sets of organization. It will take us a little bit of time, to understand our language, to understand our ways of working. This is like any marriage, She came expecting that you will cook, but you don't know how to cook, and so there's a way in which both of you have to learn to live with each other, your ways of working, your preferences, and all that. So I think the language of disaster risk reduction and the language of climate mitigation and nature may be very different for the same terms. And we have to work towards, smoothing out that language, developing ways of working as two different organizations so that we can build this partnership that is really synergistic to deliver on the goals that we are going to be working on. So, let me stop there. I know others have others they can contribute.
Yeah, thank you, Daudi. Nadia, can I ask you? Yeah.
Sure. I think for us, it's an opportunity that we're coming into a second phase in a more mature relationship where we understand one another better. I think two heads can think better than one. And this is the case where we can actually start, developing way better with the partnership we already had. Definitely communication is a challenge. But I think if we want to access the funding that our colleague was mentioning before, we need to access funding that was not traditionally given for certain approaches. We need to do it together and try a way to together access that type of resources. I think it's also very interesting the times that we're living right now, where we are no longer thinking about the plans, but starting the implementation. And when you start implementing, you realize that things are not straightforward. You can just do health. You cannot just do disaster risk management. You can just not do climate. You need to find ways of bridging those areas. And I think that these sort of partnerships where we take advantage of our mutual strengths are key to be able precisely to deliver just that.
Yep, that's really great, Nadia. Thank you so much. Yale? Yep.
Yes. Maybe to come back to the issue of scaling, because we have, as WWF, we have 1 billion income, 1.1 annually. The Red Cross is maybe 4 billion. Yeah, it's more, but the gap for NBS globally is a few hundred billion at least annually. We're not going to save the problems by doing mangrove restoration with philanthropic money. Really, we have to start from the beginning to think what is the end goal. And the end goal is landscape restoration and people preparation at scale. And that is a different mindset from the beginning. Also in the way that we approach our donors. Last week I was with a Dutch fintech organization that made a profit pledge to give 1% of their revenues to the SDGs. So my colleague from the Dutch Red Cross, he knew them well, and he said, shall we go there together? And they like concrete projects, but they liked even better the opportunity to do that at landscape scale and to make €1 from them into 10 or 100 euros that are generated. So we had two presentations and they said, okay, we promise you 4 million. And you can use part of it for real projects, but the rest use that for a scaling approach. So what we would like to do is have, together with IFRC, a global scaling support team helping country offices to develop plans at landscape level for landscape restoration and people preparation at scale, using philanthropic money to mobilize public money and private money from financial institutions or from other investors. So yes, please let us all have your transformational ideas and programs, and let us see how we can support.
Yeah, thank you, Ale, and congratulations once again for securing that additional 4 million euros through fintech company. Definitely, what Nadia had mentioned, sorry, Nini has mentioned before in terms of the anchor donor that UAE had. That's also more on the scaling up, but it's also multi-country. But as we move along, and as Dowdy highlighted, we really want to scale the partnership in much more water. Though we say 25 countries, but we really want to look from a landscape level, in the multi-country geography level. And Hang Dang, you mentioned about the Myanmar. There's a discussion going with the IFRC Asia Pacific region colleague in terms of coming out the Mekong focus. I would say a kind of regional project between WF and IFRC. So those discussions are ongoing there. Definitely, we will be in touch on those, some of the opportunity beyond fintech and others. So we will definitely count on you. So Nini, coming back to you in terms of your perspective on opportunity and challenges.
So obviously when you come last, everyone's said the things you were thinking of saying, and obviously, or dimensions there from the finance. But maybe if we look back at the roadmap, and you mentioned it, Dowdy, there was the 250 million, which I think we've discussed. Those are 25 countries and landscapes, which you just stole, Sandeep, because I thought I could have taken that one. But I will actually talk about the 20 million people. And we had a debate in our steering committee, and you raised a very good point, Dowdy, at the time, are these direct or indirect beneficiaries? And we were saying it's a bit of both, and I think to be able to achieve those kind of numbers, especially noting that we're community-based, and even if we go to ecosystem scale, we need to bring the policy and planning dimension in. So we need to be instigating changes which takes indirect beneficiaries. So the mangrove restored or the watershed restored or whatever scale of action. And I think that's going to be really interesting for us to see how do we bring together a conservation plan or disaster management plan in an ecosystem. How do we bring the different stakeholders needed, including private, public, communities, municipalities, national government together to make that happen. So to me, that's a tremendous opportunity for us and something we haven't significantly done in the first scale, but also will be a challenge, but I know we can do it. Thank you.
Thanks, Nini. So we are almost in the end of our session, but there are a few things. So maybe I will be like a rapid fire round question, the final question. So I will ask all panelists the one thing, what is the one thing that you personally do to make this partnership success? So it's like a rapid fire round. So maybe I will ask with Yale, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so this is one of the biggest priorities in our Dutch office. And I will personally devote my time and energy. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank you, Sandeep, for your commitment, long time, and your expertise, and also bringing us together on this issue.
Well, thank you, Yale. Nini?
Well, I'll commit to two things. One is immediately on the building climate resilient communities that we saw the video on, to make sure that we secure the co-financing, or we give all we can and bring the right levels to work on that. And secondly, I will personally commit to the meeting that we've already agreed on brainstorming. I'm bringing my colleague Mary at the back, and yourself, Sandeep, and Vero and others, so that we're actually going to discuss how we're going to do this policy and planning dimension in those 25 countries.
Great, thanks. Dowdy?
Yeah, so this partnership has a steering committee that I co-chair with my colleague from IFRC. So my commitment is that we will keep your feet to the fire so that you can deliver on the ambition.
Wow, thanks, Dowdy. Nadia?
I guess what I'm taking is I'll definitely continue advocating for it. yelling it high and loud wherever I can, so that we understand that we're not alone in this together, and we're in this together, and that we can collaborate with one another in our specific context and make it work.
Thank you. Thank you, Nadia. So in this event, one of the key objectives was to launch our second phase of our partnership. And so I would like all the panelists to launch this roadmap.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we are almost coming to the end of our event. But lastly, let me also highlight my friend over here in the audience, Mary, who is the coastal community lead. She has recently launched a great report that I had also contributed on that, which talks about climate, coast, and the communities. And it really talks about scaling NBS for resilient coastal community and ocean ecosystem. So if you really want to learn more, please contact Mary over there, my colleague. And so with that, let me... Okay. Yeah.
Maybe just if we can have a next slide, Dana.
Oh, yeah.
So you can all have access onto this report and our lovely communications team. That's actually something they'll come back to us if we don't mention it. But one of the pillars of our collaboration is a communications team, and they've done a lot for us. So there's more materials online, and you might be sitting on the QR code as well, which is all thanks to our communications team. So an applause for them as well, please.
Yeah. Thanks, Nini, for highlighting that. So with that, I think we come to the close of our event. So let me quickly summarize the discussion. Firstly, let me thank to all my panelists for the great input, the great insight, and also the great guidance that we received today. This is really exciting and exciting for at least for me, and I believe to all of you as well. And most importantly, I would really like to thank all of you coming this evening in this very late hour to our event, and those who are joining online. Thank to our technical colleagues and also all our communication colleagues who are really supporting this event tirelessly for a number of days to come out and producing the report, and most importantly, who has contributed on making this report a success. 25 colleagues from both WWF and IFRC has worked a lot in terms of coming out these roadmap documents since March 2025. So it took really long time. So this is very, very important thing. So with that, let me say a quote which I always like. For example, so the quote is that if you really want to go fast, go along. But if you really want to go far, go together. So with that note, we really want to go together far enough with IFRC, with all our networks and all. So with that note, let me once again thank to all my panelists. Thank to you guys coming for this event, and have a great evening. Thank you all.